You have probably heard the story before. Modern humans arrived, and the older human species simply could not keep up. We were smarter, faster to adapt, built for a future they were not. But look inside your own cells, and the story gets complicated. A measurable piece of your DNA came from a species you were told lost. If they disappeared, why does part of them still breathe inside you? Picture yourself walking a rocky coastline in Africa, 70,000 years ago. The heat clings to your skin, and the sea sets the pace of your day. You are not alone on this journey. Your small group moves slowly along the shore, following fish, shellfish, and fresh water. Somewhere ahead, other humans already live on this land. Not your kind of human. Their skulls are heavier, their brows thicker, their bodies built for cold you have never felt. You do not know their name for themselves. You only know you will meet them, trade with them, fear them, and eventually share children with them. None of this feels historic. It feels like survival, one uncertain step at a time. Your feet know this land is not home. Generations back, your ancestors began in Africa, in valleys far from this shoreline. You carry their memory only in habit, in language, in the tools slung across your back. Danger is normal here. Predators track the same water sources you need. Sickness spreads fast in a small band with nowhere to retreat. And yet you keep moving, because staying still has never been the safer choice. Somewhere behind you, closer to where your kind first stood upright, other groups like yours are spreading too. They move outward in waves, over thousands of years. They move into lands already claimed by people who are not quite strangers and not quite like you. Your kind did not begin as one dramatic event in one perfect location. The oldest confirmed remains of Homo sapiens come from Jebel Irhoud in what is now Morocco, dated to roughly 300,000 years ago. That is, 100,000 years earlier than scientists once assumed. The evidence points to something stranger than a single birthplace. Early humans were already spread across Africa, mixing and moving between regions, while the continent itself looked different, greener, more connected than it is today. And you were never alone on this planet. At the same time your ancestors were spreading, other human species already existed. Neanderthals held Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans occupied parts of Asia we are still mapping today. Smaller, stranger relatives lived on the island of Flores and in caves in southern Africa. For most of human history, being human meant sharing the world with other kinds of humans. Your ancestors were not becoming modern all at once either. Symbolic behavior, pigment use, deliberately pierced shells worn as ornaments. These appear in the African record as early as 70 to 160,000 years ago. Some researchers see a sudden cognitive leap around 50,000 years ago. Others see a slow accumulation stretched across hundreds of thousands of years, with no single switch flipped. Either way, by around 70,000 years ago, groups of your ancestors began pushing out of Africa in earnest, following a southern coastal route across Arabia and into South Asia. Within 20,000 years, their descendants reached Australia. Along the way, one popular theory claimed a supervolcano at Toba nearly wiped humanity out, collapsing the population to a few thousand survivors. Recent archaeology tells a different story. Sites in India show continued occupation right through the eruption, and updated climate models suggest the volcanic winter was far milder than first believed. Your ancestors, it turns out, were tougher than that theory gave them credit for. As they pushed into Neanderthal and Denisovan territory, something more intimate than conflict was also happening. Scientists spent decades assuming any contact between these groups ended in pure replacement, one line simply erasing the other. Then, geneticist Svante Pääbo pulled usable DNA from Neanderthal bone, a feat once considered nearly impossible. His team compared that ancient genome to living humans and found something the replacement story could not explain. Most people whose ancestors left Africa carry Neanderthal DNA today, roughly 1 to 4% of their genome. Then Pääbo's team went further, identifying an entirely unknown human relative from a single finger bone in a Siberian cave, the Denisovans. Populations across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA, inherited traits that still shape how bodies handle altitude and how immune systems respond to disease. In 2022, this work earned Pääbo the Nobel Prize. The conclusion reshaped the whole field. Homo sapiens did not simply walk into Neanderthal and Denisovan territory and erase what was there. Your ancestors met them, lived near them, and had children with them repeatedly across tens of thousands of years. So the question was no longer simple replacement. If your ancestors were mixing with Neanderthals and Denisovans instead of simply erasing them, something else had to explain why only one lineage remained standing. For a long time, the obvious answer was intelligence. Bigger brains, sharper tools, a species built to outthink its rivals. It is a satisfying story, and it fits everything you already believe about human progress. But Neanderthal brains were, on average, as large as ours, sometimes larger. They made specialized tools, controlled fire, buried their dead, and used pigments the same way your ancestors did. Raw brainpower alone cannot explain who survived and who did not. So researchers looked elsewhere. Maybe the Neanderthals simply inbred themselves into decline, trapped in small, isolated pockets. A 2026 genetic study challenged that too, finding real diversity among some of the last Neanderthal populations right before they vanished. Maybe it was climate alone, the ice sheets advancing, the game disappearing. But a 2026 analysis found that climate and competition together still cannot fully account for the timing of their disappearance. One by one, the clean answers keep failing the same test. What remains are smaller, harder truths. Homo sapiens may have carried diseases their bodies had adapted to in crowded tropical regions, diseases Neanderthal immune systems had never faced. Homo sapiens may have built wider, more flexible social networks, trading, communicating, and pulling in help across greater distances, while Neanderthal groups stayed small and regionally isolated, fragile against sudden shocks. Neither of those is a story about superior minds. Both are stories about margins, about resilience, about which network held together when conditions turned hostile. No single study closes the case. Extinction likely unfolded differently region by region, shaped by local disease, local climate, local contact, with no one clean cause covering all of it. The apparent answer, that we simply outthought them, cannot survive contact with the evidence. And here is the harder truth underneath all of it. Homo sapiens did not outcompete every rival human on Earth and stand alone as the reward. We absorbed pieces of them first. The Neanderthal genes in your immune system, the Denisovan genes helping some populations breathe at high altitude. These are not trophies from a war we won. They are what is left of species that did not vanish, so much as dissolve into us. The consequence of that mixing is written into your genome right now. You are not a clean, single lineage. You are a composite, stitched together from populations that modern taxonomy likes to treat as separate species. That same instinct to sort the world into separate, competing categories has not gone away. It shows up when people take a genetic test and treat their Neanderthal percentage as a curiosity from outside themselves, a foreign contaminant rather than an ancestor. Someone opens that ancestry report on a phone, scrolls past the number, and closes the app without a second thought, as if the migrations, the interbreeding, the near misses that produced that number were somebody else's story. It shows up whenever a group draws a hard line between us and them, as if the boundary between human populations was ever that clean. The science does not support a direct, inherited instinct for tribalism reaching back 100,000 years. That claim goes further than the evidence allows. What the science does support is simpler and stranger. The line you draw between your own identity and some outside group is far blurrier, biologically, than it feels. The species you were told lost is not somewhere else. It is not gone. It is inside the very cells asking the question. So go back to the story you started with, the one about smarter humans simply replacing the primitive ones. It was never that simple, and now you know why. Homo sapiens did not win a clean contest against every other human species on Earth. We walked beside them, argued with the same rivers and winters they did, and in the end, carried pieces of them forward inside our own bodies. Extinction, it turns out, is not always the opposite of survival. Sometimes, it just changes address. So the next time someone tells you exactly where you end and another kind of human begins, ask them how sure they really are.